All right, in this lesson, we are going to give you an introduction to transaction analysis. Some of this we've already covered in the last lesson. A lot of it, we're helping you build that foundation so that as we start tacking on things when it comes to understanding how to solve a transaction, you kind of have a better idea of what you're looking for and what you're doing. So let's take a look at an introduction to a transaction. So a couple of basic reviews here. In accounting, we use transactions to summarize the business activities of an organization. So everything is transactional based in accounting when it comes to taking data and transforming that into information that external users can use to make decisions on the company. Now, transactions always affect the accounting equation. So when we think about a transaction, it has to affect the accounting equation. And when it does affect the accounting equation, it must do so in which the accounting equation still works. It still balances at the end of the day. Assets must still equal liabilities plus owner's capital. Transactions is really the mechanics of how we do accounting. So if you're thinking about, what does accountants do? We are transaction based. We take data and we transact that into an accounting system. Now, there's two types of transactions when we talk about transactions analysis that you should know about, and the two are internal and external transactions. And I know I just switched that from your screen here, but external or internal transactions. What do we mean by external and internal transactions? External transactions are exchanges, the give and take between the company and someone outside the company, e.g. an outsider. So for instance, an external transaction would be an example of Coca-Cola delivering a soda to Target. That is an external exchange because Target doesn't own Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola doesn't own Target. Two independent outsiders that are making a transaction together. That's an external transaction. An internal transaction, on the other hand, is an exchange or a give and take within the company. It typically doesn't involve external parties. So an example would be when I worked at Taco Bell, we would have all of this inventory, and then another store would have a surge of people that comes in, and they're starting to run low on things. So I could remember the other store running low on taco shells, and so they could wait a day and wait for the trucks to come in to replenish them, or they can do an interstore transfer. And since we had enough taco shells, they could literally come down to our store, or we could go to their store and deliver them a huge box of taco shells. And so that's what we did. That's an example of an internal transaction. So the transactions between these two stores, we're going to sell them basically a box of our taco shells so that they have taco shells that they can sell and continue selling throughout the day. And usually this would happen because maybe by noon they don't have any more, and they're not just going to tell people, well, we don't have any taco shells, so we can't make any tacos, so that we're going to go ahead and give it to them so that they can continue selling and continue making money. In exchange, it comes off of our books. Maybe they pay us something. I don't know. I wasn't a manager, so don't know the internal details. All I remember is delivering taco shells and like extra large cups to this other store. Happens all the time. So that is an internal transaction. So we should be aware that there are external and internal transactions within an organization, and each one's going to involve different types of documentation. External obviously will have a third party type of evidence, and internal may not have a third party evidence. It's going to be internally created, but we'll still have some type of evidence so that we can know that we're booking something that we're supposed to be. Now, there is something called the transaction trap that I want you to be aware of as you're going through this, and there are some examples in which I throw in that there isn't an actual transaction here because of this transactional trap. So a transaction does not occur when a promise is made. So when there is a promise in the transaction, that is not necessarily a transaction. An exchange must happen. A give and take must happen in order for there to be a transaction, not a promise. So for instance, if someone promises to give you $40,000, no transaction has occurred. Nothing has been exchanged. We can't exchange a promise for a promise, okay? We promised to buy $5,000 worth of goods. Great. say that you're promising to buy $5,000 worth of goods from us. However, that's not a transaction because there was no exchange. Lastly, we signed a contract to purchase a year's worth of goods. That's not an exchange. Some people would argue that if they signed a contract, didn't you exchange a contract for their word? Sure, but that's not actually an exchange. That's just a promise. So promises are not transactions. And if you see them, there is no journal entry at the end of the day. So let's review this. A company will always document the activities in which it makes a transaction. So we should have some documentation. We should have some evidence to substantiate the transactions. And like we said in the last lesson, this could be done by a receipt, invoice, check, stock certificate, loan promissory note. There's always some type of evidence that we could get that helps substantiate the transaction in which we're actually booking into the financial books of the company. Now, when a company does business, the businesses always receive something and give something up. That's how we know a transaction is occurring. So when we're giving you a list of transactions to maybe journalize, you got to think about what's being given, what's actually being received. This is called the exchange. So there's always an exchange when we talk about transactions. Now, essentially, a company exchanges one thing for another in the daily life to create more value, right? So why does Target sell iPads? Well, they're selling iPads because they can make money. They can make more cash at the end of the day. What could they do with that cash? That cash, they can buy more inventory. So at the end of the day, it creates more value because they'll have more cash that they can use to buy more stuff, to hopefully make more money, to be able to pay dividends to their shareholders, grow the company, open new stores, etc., etc., etc. Now, exchange does not always have to create more value to be productive. Sometimes you have to step back before you go forward. So for instance, there's something in the retail market called a loss leader. These are items that are usually sold for less than maybe they cost, or maybe less than they're usually sold for. They don't typically make a lot of money, if they make any money at all. But the reason why they have this loss leader is to get people to their store, right? If you think of a Black Friday sale, why do people want to line up 6 hours, 7 hours for a TV that's $100 off? Well, probably because that TV is never $100 off. Well, why is Best Buy doing it? It's to get people into their store. They're hoping that once you come into that store and you buy that TV, you're also buying all the accessories that have a high profit margin. So you're buying a wall mount that costs $90, but it only costs Best Buy $20 to acquire, right? So those are loss leaders. So sometimes you don't always create value. You have to take a step back to create that value. So thinking about that, we should always be creating value, but sometimes it doesn't always work that way in order to get what we need at the end of the day. Now, this helps establish what we call the double entry accounting system. When we talk about transactions, we're always going to have two sets of lines, at least two sets of lines, because we're always giving and we're always receiving. And so because of that transaction, we have this double entry accounting system. We'll never have a single entry accounting system. A single entry accounting system would be your grandma, grandpa, dad's checkbook ledger, where they write, check number, who they wrote the check for, and the amount of the check. That is a single entry accounting system because they're not actually putting the other side of it, basically. All right, so reviewing from section 1, remember that we have these components. Now, these are 4 of the 6 components, and each component is going to have a whole bunch of accounts, right? So we have all of these accounts here that are underneath these components. So, for instance, cash is an asset. Liabilities, accounts payable is a liability. Revenues, sales is a sales revenue. Expense would be a cost of goods sold, would be an expense. So we have all of these accounts and all of these components. Every account can be assigned to a component. Every component will have different accounts within itself. And so just like you have a bank and you can have many different types of accounts at a bank, we can have many different types of accounts within a component. You'll never see the same account in 2 components. So you'll never see cash, for instance, in revenues and assets. that can't happen. They can only be in one component at the end of the day. Now, this is great and all. I'm telling you all of these accounts, but in the real world, how does it really work? Well, in the real world, a company comes up with something called the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is a list of all the accounts a company uses. The accounts list the account name as well as its corresponding account number. So we typically take an account number and we assign that to an account's name. So for instance, in this case here, account number 100 is cash. The reason why we do that, it's easier to memorize and use that number than it is to type out accounts. So if I know that cash is always 100, when I go into the accounting system to do the journal entry, I can type 100 and it'll bring up the name cash. And so that's what we use these account numbers. It just makes it so much easier. So if you start to see account numbers, don't be afraid. It's an arbitrary number that we've basically put to an account name, but it helps us work a little bit faster at the end of the day. Now, the chart of account lists all the accounts that a company uses, which means if you don't see it on the chart of accounts, it means that they don't have that account available. So for instance, if I receive cash, obviously that's going to be in cash. But if I receive pesos, Mexican pesos, what do I do with that? Well, the only place that I can put it in right now is cash. So it's going to go into cash. If I receive Canadian dollars, it's not US dollars. I can't really use it. Where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it in cash. Okay. So this restricts the ability for an accountant just to create so many different accounts to make it worth their while. We're trying to narrow it down so it makes it easy on the entire accounting process. Now, as we start to learn about how we do transactions, we've got 3 steps to transactions. So the first thing that you'll do is you'll analyze the transaction. Really, you're analyzing it to see if it's actually a transaction. If it's a promise, then we're done. Not a transaction, not going to book it. But if there's an exchange, a give and a take, then we need to make sure that it is a transaction, and we'll analyze that transaction so that when we do step 2, which is record the transaction, we actually record it. So the first step is we're going to analyze the transaction to make sure it is a transaction, something that we should book into our books of the company. And then step number 2 is we're actually going to record the transaction using debits and credits and journal entries that we'll learn here soon enough. Step number 3 is then we'll summarize the transaction. So we summarize that through the financial statement. So we'll summarize those transactions through a financial statement. Instead of giving the detailed to management, we're going to give them a high-level look unless they want the detail behind it. So that is an introduction to transactions. So what's going to happen here in the next couple of videos is we're actually going to show you examples, and we're going to go through a lot. They're going to get annoying at some point because we're just going to go through a lot, but we're going to go through a lot of transactions here so that you can understand the give and the take and how it actually affects the accounting equation. Once we do all of that, in another area, we are going to talk about journal entries and how we actually journalize them into the books of a company. So kind of step by step, we're helping you get to that point where you can actually do transactions and journal entries on your own. So in the next lesson, we're going to show you how we analyze a transaction in our first video. So hope you enjoyed this lesson, and we'll see you in the next video. Hey guys, it is Patrick. Don't forget to press the like button and share this video with someone who could get a lot of use from watching this lesson, like maybe a classmate or maybe a friend or maybe just a parent, just because you wanted to share this video because you're very excited about what you saw. Share it with someone. And if you want to help us grow and help us make sure that we put the very best in accounting topics out on YouTube, make sure you press the subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. That way you're alerted every time we post videos to this channel. Now, I do this with every one of my classes at the end of class. What did you learn from this lesson? Put that in the comment section below, and I'll respond to you on what you got out of this video. So hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you in the next lesson.